All right, we are live. Greetings and welcome to Obscuria Filmcast. Today, we will be discussing the film The Morning After, directed by Sindey Lumet in 1986. This was a selection from Dan Simon. Dan Simon's going to tell us a little bit about why he chose this film and give us a little bit of a synopsis of it before we dive into our discussion. As always, hit that like button, subscribe, leave us a comment. And if you want to join the discussion, there is always a link in the description which will allow you to jump onto this conversation if you have some input on this or any of our other film casts. Dan, take it
All
away,
right.
my brother.
So first, you say Lumet, I say Lumet.
Is it
Is
Lumet?
that the right pronunciation?
I never got the.
I think
I
it
never
is
got the
Lumet,
proper
but I've heard.
I think it's Sindey Lumet.
pronunciations.
Most people say Sindey Lumet.
I mean, he's not French, is he?
No, he's a Eastern Europe, Ashkenazi.
You know
Jew.
what? I
Red
call
Viper,
I
baby.
call a slight BS there because whatever his name is probably something else. Lumet
Oh,
is probably some
Lumetsky.
shortened version of some
Yes.
other Russian name, which isn't even his real name because Jews don't have Russian names.
Absolutely, and he's a Lower East Side diaper baby. We're not going to get into his.
You mean red diaper baby? You got to specify the color.
Red diaper baby from the Lower
Yes.
East Side.
Okay.
Who rehearsed most of his films at the Ukrainian Center
In the East
the
Village.
same block as the Selka. Yeah,
Nice.
he used to rehearse his movies there.
That's what's up.
For anybody who never read Making Movies, as any film buff or filmmaker,
And everyone should
read Making Movies by
Yes.
Sindey Lumet. He actually mentions this movie, rehearsing this film or working with Andrzej Bartot, but I can't. It's a Polish name. His DP. He worked a lot with in the 80s.
Okay.
I always forget the pronunciation. But so the 80s is a lost decade for, I guess, Sindey Lumet critically, even though, as Seth pointed out last week, commercially, The Morning After did very well, which doesn't exactly qualify it as an obscure film, although most people have never seen the movie. Mm-hmm. It was set in 1986 and it stars Jane Fonda and Jeff Bridges and Raul Julia, and it's about this washed
I believe
up.
it's Raul Julia.
All right, let him talk.
A washed up alcoholic TV actress wakes up in the bed of a strange man, and he's dead, and he has a knife wound in the center of his chest. And she panics, thinking she did it. And she starts cleaning up the joint and goes on the run. And that's the inciting incident of the film. On the run, she meets a retired police officer played by Jeff Bridges. She connects by phone her ex, but still married husband, played by Raul Julia, who advises her not to go to the police, and she does not. And, she knows that she's a suspect and she can't remember whether she did it or not. So that's the setup of the film. And it's what I like about it is, like a lot of psychological thrillers of the 70s and 80s, is you have this plot, but it's not really about the plot. It's really more about relationships and characters. And, I just wish more films did that today, where you really explore these people and you get really specific about their backstories and their life and, the atmosphere of their lives and their relationships. And, interestingly, one of the co-screenwriters was a longtime collaborator of Sidney Pollack, and his name is, I think probably still alive, David Raphael, who wrote, I think 3 Days of Condor.
I love that movie.
Yeah, and like Sindey Lumet movies, Sidney Pollack movies, Sindey Pollack and Sindey Lumet are contemporaries. I like to call them sort of the elder New Hollywood class, right? You have the Scorseses and the Spielbergs and the Lucases and the Coppolas, but then you have the elder New Hollywood, which is Kubrick, Lumet, Sidney Pollack, Robert Altman, Bob Rafelson, who are, I guess, 10 to 15 years older. And Sidney Pollack made a lot of movies where you had a societal issue or events that were caused by outside the protagonist's control, and you examine a relationship, specifically relationships between men and women within that, like Tootsie or The Absence of Malice, which the same screenwriter wrote. He's uncredited on this, but this is Sidney Lumet's film, but it almost is like a Sidney Pollack movie in that sense, where it centers on, this love story between a man and a woman and all of this world around them that, sort of, affects their choices and, swallows them up and spits them out. Jeff Bridges, his life as a police officer in some small California town, and Jane Fonda as an actress in the, in the television business of that period. And her, it's actually one of the better alcoholic movies I've seen. I mean,
it's one of the best blackout drunk performances, I think. Like, if you're talking about a specific type of drunk, because there's all types of drunks, right? But as far as that, like, I really don't remember what I did last night drunk, I can't think of many as good as that. I can't think of another like this one.
Right.
Like, it was like, oh, man, I know people who get drunk with this.
Yeah.
Where they literally can't. And also, the first time it's established that she drinks like this is when she calls her ex-husband, and he's like, how can you, like, he has a sense of humor about it, but a contempt, where he has to describe what she did back to her. And I've done that too.
And when you get to the end of the movie, you understand why.
You understand why.
He despises her. Why he could have done what he, whatever. We don't want to spoil this plot, because this is actually a fun one. Yeah. And actually, that reveal comes out of nowhere. And I mean, not comes out of nowhere, but it's obvious. It's actually a good surprise. I thought the reveal was going to say
also the thing about the two Sydneys, Pollack and Lumet, they both came out of an acting background.
That's right.
Before they were directors.
That's right.
Lumet studied at what's the acting school? The High School for Performing Arts. I think it was the first class, actually.
Right.
And
was Meisner's.
Meisner, the neighborhood playhouse, and was one of his assistants. And
they both came from directing television.
Yeah, they both came from that, and so you can see how specific the backstory of the characters is. Whereas if other directors had kind of created these characters with the story, it would be more about the story. Like, she's a very specific type of drunk.
This is really about relationships. This is about people.
It's relationships, and that's what I like about this movie.
Yeah, me too.
But it also comes out of a specific 80s period of movie making.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's 70s extended in a way.
It's 70s extended, but it's gotten to a point now where there's so much money flooding into the movies.
Yeah.
That I just was like, this would be so much better if this movie was made around 1978, 79, instead of showing so much of the glam of Hollywood. Like, now we're at a time where we're throwing...
Or if it had been made in 1994, where it would have been a little bit more polished and a little darker.
Yeah, that's kind of what I like about it.
I'm not saying that would have made it a better movie. It just would have been more of that kind of movie.
There's just a point where...
There's something very special about this period, mid-'80s, and like, it's something that I've been discovering since we started doing this show, because I didn't grow up with a lot of those movies.
Yeah.
And what interested me was Sidney Lumet, because the 80s period is he's known for his 70s films mostly. But in the 80s, he goes on to do like Prince of the City. This is after The Wiz. Wiz is like 78, 79. And then there's Prince of the City. And then there's he does Daniel, about the Rosenbergs. He does Running on Empty with River Phoenix. He does this. And they're kind of forgotten movies of his. Like he's sort of not critically known. Then there was this movie called Q&A. Do you remember that film with Nick Nolte?
And didn't he do that one where what's your name is hiding among the Hasidim?
That's 90s.
Oh.
That's 90s.
Yeah.
That's Melanie Griffith.
Melanie
Yeah.
Griffith.
Melanie Griffith is a detective among the Hasidim.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He was really prolific. I mean, he
was prolific, but there gets to be a point
A Stranger Among Us.
Stranger Among Us.
92.
Yeah. There gets to be this point. They mention it in Easy Rider's Raging Bull, where the money starts pouring in. Like first Hollywood is dying, and there's not enough money for these new directors. And then then the blockbusters come in, and there's money for these new directors. And so they start competing with each other for who can make blockbuster movies. But it's these new guys, and they're just like, well, who can get the bigger car, and who can get the bigger special effect, and who can get the bigger, stars, and who can.
And they veer off into genre.
Yeah, and they're starting to compete with each other, and the scripts start to suffer. And I think this is right at the point where I'm just like, I don't know. It's like, okay, this is a Jane Fonda vehicle, and we know Jane Fonda is really good, and we saw her when she was like a really good actress and not a star driving. And we know that he's great from his, when he was like really part of the independent film movement of the 70s and what am I thinking?
Bogdanovich.
With the Bogdanovich, but So both of these people are from a period when we know they really pushed films.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I don't know. I mean, just like.
But his character work is so good.
So great.
Yeah.
And then also, there's this period where it's like, I was like, you never see another thing is like, remember when bigotry was funny? Remember when LA bigotry was fun? Wasn't that
there's like another I think elephant in the room with the whole bigotry is funny thing. It's almost like there's a sort of liberal elitism like just implicit in the film, which it almost doesn't translate well to like in the spirit of what where you're going with this, Seth, I believe. There's a sort of dynamic that doesn't really translate well to today, which is like it's kind of like the sort of outskirts of LA, Bakersville, yokel type of guy who he's not racist and he's not really a bigot, but he's sort of just kind of like a little too blue collar to understand, and they portray him as a bigot initially. But like the idea is that like,
he was joking about that. He was poking fun at the perception of him.
Right, of course.
He was right. He wasn't a racist. He
wasn't, and he wasn't depicted as a racist. But he did use like what would be considered late racial slurs early on in the film. Like what did he say, Beaner or And so I'm saying it's more of like a tale. It's like they're trying to depict the divide. It was really just a film trying to depict the divide between two different cultures.
And she's kind of I hate to use the word, but she's also
a total snob.
And she's kind of a fag hag. Like she's right. I'm not supposed to use that word.
Oh yeah, that's also the thing. The first person you see is Bruce Valanche. Like the first place she goes for help is to the local West Hollywood gay bar.
Yeah. Right. And then later she goes to borrow a dress from her drag queen friend.
And he says, I'm not.
Which I thought was
really specifically says, I'm not a transvestite, I'm a drag queen. And that's why you won't find any dresses that are subdued and sort of normal looking.
And then he talks about how he dated a mafia guy and he was very gentle and conservative.
Right.
And Raul Julia's sexuality is ambiguous. You're not quite sure what he says.
No.
He's straight. to the top.
I think it's implicit. I think it's trying to imply that he's gay throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
And that's why they have this special relationship. There's no jealousy. There's no,
Right.
and that he's just trying to climb the ladder and get power. He's a power hungry man,
Right.
Mhm.
But anyway, Judy, we haven't heard
All right,
too
let's
much
talk-
yet.
I'm just
Judy.
listening.
I want to
By
hear
the
what
way,
you
am I in
think
trouble
about
for
this.
using that
You're-
term now? Am I like completely?
No, it's
What,
fine. It's
using that
irrelevant
term?
terms.
No,
It's a
it's-
relevant term.
It has to go back to discuss what was the period too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys have so much knowledge. I just like listening. So I'll just give my interpretation of the film or my experience of it. At first, I started watching it and I was kind of like, it seems like one of those 80s films. I'm not sure if this is like sort of funny or not. And now I sort of want to watch it again, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know if it's just aging me, but it sort of just brought me back. And what I love about it is, and I think you guys touched upon this, is that it really does focus on the story of the characters and the people. And it goes back to this time where God, films just felt so much simpler. There's so much depth in them, and it's so subtle and it's so simple. Because I feel like now everything has to be like, it's like you're just getting like slapped across the face, like visually, like auditory. I don't know what the word is, auditory, whatever.
You're
Your
getting
sound,
saturated.
You're just totally bombarded with all this stuff. And like, and I feel like also in the goal, I'm going to bring up like the modern television, like there's so much good stories that are going on, but they're like these mysteries that are like so detailed, that it feels like you're watching a mystery. So I sort of loved how it brought it back to be so simple that for a moment I was like bored, right? If I was just sitting there and I just, wanted to watch like this story, like I would modern TV to like figure out what's going on, I was kind of bored. But then when I sort of started to like the characters, I forget, maybe like 25 minutes in, once I started to be like, oh, I kind of like them, because she kind of annoyed me a little bit in the beginning.
Sure.
And
she does.
she was annoying, and I was like, I don't know, it's Jane Fonda, and I feel like she hasn't she's hardly aged too, like she almost like looks just a tiny bit older, but but I watched it, but I just really loved the simplicity of it, and then I got to like both characters, and I got to like a woman who wasn't really likable for some of it, and just thinking like, why not just call the police? Like, why are you going through all this, And so I just liked that part of it. I saw that in the trivia, it lists on IMDb how in some of the scenes she was actually drunk. Because there was a scene where she's drunk. I think it's the first scene where he sets up the nice meal outside on like the patio.
I love that scene.
Right? It's a great
I was
scene.
saying she's doing drunk a little too well in that scene. That's what I was
No,
thinking.
see, I thought that I was like, oh, this is a terrible drunk in that scene. I didn't buy it. And then later on, I was like, I bought it. So I don't know which one. I would be curious to see which one she was really drunk in.
I was actually oscillating in that one. I was thinking like, this is a little bit too, like I couldn't tell. It's like, this is a little too over the top. Like she's really stumbling, but I think the disconnect is that it's hard to believe that they would let her get that drunk, but that is what drunk people look like when they are that drunk.
Yeah.
They stumble like that.
Drunk is real. Yeah. It's not.
Drunk is really hard.
It's like you're falling down and sorry, go ahead, Seth.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That scene was so beautifully shot and acted. Jeff Bridges is wonderful in that scene.
I just want to say that drunk is not always dependable as the acting teacher on a film set because it's a long day on set, and you can sober up on a film. There's a story, and she's very public about it. To loosen up in a love scene, Jennifer Lawrence got drunk on Passengers with Chris Pine, and by the time they shot the scene, she was sober.
Right.
So it didn't work.
Right.
And
there's a craft to that. There's a craft to that, and I know actors who manage that very well.
Mastering the timing. I think Al Pacino in The Godfather. Al Pacino in The Godfather supposedly used that to great effect. He was supposedly buzzed the entire film. I don't know if that's true or not.
It's just not a reliable drug, at all. Especially if you've got like a a 12-hour, 18-hour shoot. It's just not going to be.
But
Yeah.
if you're somebody who drinks and you're dependent on it and you have a high tolerance, it's really
Yeah.
easy to have a flask and just keep a buzz going steady all day long.
But
Yeah.
a buzz is different from being hammered.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's
Yeah.
true. I mean, I make the point
Yeah.
with like I'm comparing this like stumbling Jane
Yeah.
Fonda to a somewhat plausibly tipsy Al Pacino, who is
Yeah.
who can that's a character. I mean, that if he was drinking, if he was intoxicated, he wasn't so intoxicated that he couldn't conceal it.
Yeah.
But there are moments where I think he's slurring a little bit, and you know, it's subtle. But obviously, Jane Fonda stumbling all over the place. There's nothing subtle about that. And if she was actually
she's
drunk,
got great diction, though, so even when she's drinking,
sure.
I mean, if you ever noticed about Jane Fonda, her diction is superb. It must be a Fonda thing.
I mean,
Oh
she's
yeah,
just,
she just like really cuts through like with some of the dialogue.
Yes.
I was like, because I used to get called to like I was really good at being mean, but like she really just nails like this, like she's just like sweet, and then she's just like daggers verbally, just like through you.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, I don't like you, and I admire you at the same time.
I mean, how could you not admire her? And the airport scene. I was just thinking the airport scene is unbelievable. I mean, the way she did the fake crying, and she had so she had to act like she's an actress portraying somebody pretending to be grieving, and the balance that she struck between making it look I mean, it was just perfect. That's a very, I mean, Seth, I'm sure, as a coach, what would you say? Can you attest to that being like quite a challenging balance to strike?
It's but also if you've grown up being an actor in an actor family,
you can just kind of put the actor thing on
and having to like press daddy's buttons.
I guess it's not that.
And that was a drinking family in LA.
I mean, that growing up in that house. And wanting to, I mean, just the fact that like she pulls one on her father and on Golden Pond. You know, she always wanted to act with her father and on Golden Pond. And there's a moment where she gets method with her dad, and she puts her hand on her father, and I always thought we could be friends. And she puts her hand on him. And he in this and there's a moment, and I just think that like. When you're a kid and you grow up in a house like that and with an actor father and an actress mother who wasn't allowed to act and committed suicide, and an acting brother who
two, right? Yeah.
Two
or just, no, was it one? No, it was one. No, Peter.
It was one.
Yeah.
I'm
thinking of Bridget.
He had a suicide attempt and he made himself think that he didn't.
Right.
So I mean I think that I mean, I've known people like that. Like, I've known people who do tricks like have done tricks like that. So I think yes, it's it's very realistic, and it's very real and very well performed. Because on a certain level, you want the audience to think she's not doing this, is she? Oh, she is. Oh, I just saw that. And if you don't get it, then all right, well. Then you'll see it the next time you watch the film if you do. Right. But yeah, it's brilliant. That moment is brilliant.
And I love the shift when they ask her about how there's no flights to San Francisco, and she goes, "How about Vegas?" You know,
how about Vegas?
Yeah.
the voice she uses. It's almost like she's imitating Henry Fonda in that moment. It was like Henry Fonda came through.
It was a little unclear to me, like what was her objective? So a couple of things I want some clarification on. What was her objective in taking this flight to wherever? Like, was she just trying to get out of town?
Yeah.
Okay. And then when she couldn't get on a flight, and that little charade with the car and I didn't understand that at all. What was she okay, that wasn't her car that she got into?
I
thought it was.
That was her car.
Okay,
because at the end the cop says, "Oh, I brought your car.
Oh, that's right.
I took it out."
Okay, so she drove herself there, and because I thought she was in a taxi being driven. initially. It's
Everybody in
confusing
LA
because
has
what happened was she was in a taxi, and then I believe that's when the credits started rolling at a certain point, and then it was right after the credits rolled, about 10 minutes in, that she's now she's at the airport. But so it doesn't show her pulling into the airport, but then she's in the car, and she's just trying to get out from a double parked position. It looked like she was intentionally hitting the people behind her in front of her. That it just looked a little strange to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it was intentional.
Okay, so she was just trying to get out of that jam.
She was just trying to get out of that jam.
Okay, got you. And then she got stuck, and then she opened the door into that guy's.
Wasn't it also with two other blue collar type men?
Yes.
Yes.
Because it went from those two men. She's in a whole like the non-Hollywood type.
Yes.
You know, in the airport with workers to other workers to then Jeff Bridges.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like the law, the rule of three. It's like the 1, 2, 3.
Right.
Yeah. After waking up next to a pornographer with a knife in his head.
With a knife in his heart. Yeah.
Who's on TV?
Who's on television?
I mean,
that opening shot.
It's a great start to a film.
It is. Yeah.
It really
You know?
is.
Yeah.
It really is. That's what got me.
Yeah.
He's on TV being established as like kind of a scumbag.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're talking about like exercise being the new porn. And of course, it's Jane Fonda,
Right.
who's in bed with, who's like
that
famous for her like aerobics
workout
videos.
tapes. Yeah, that irony wasn't lost on me with that.
Yeah.
I also love how she played that scene when she wakes up.
Yeah.
And doesn't really thinks it's a joke, and then starts, wants it to be a
Because you would
joke.
think, is this a joke? Because he's on TV.
Right.
And he's established as a scumbag.
Yeah.
And also because Francis Ford Coppola already did the thing with the horse's head, so maybe it was some gag.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then did you notice like when she's in the cab and the guy goes, "Are you asking me this question about your bank because to get out of this fare?"
Yeah.
There's this beautiful yellow building.
Yeah.
Like it's the sunshine and like it's the most yellow building with a yellow cab going by it. And I'm like, right at that moment, I was like, am I gonna have to watch this movie? You're like 10 minutes in at that point. I was like, am I gonna have to watch this movie? And then I'm like, oh, this is a Sindey Lumet film. It's this beautiful, beautiful shot. It's just so California and so 80s. And I'm like, oh yeah, there is a reason why 80s movies are kind of cool with all the money poured into them this way. But
again, this is a great DP. This is a great Polish DP. Andrzej Bartolski, whatever his name.
And the light in California is the reason they shoot in California. Like it reminds you that like even
also, if I'm not mistaken, this is one LA movie. Like all his movies are East Coast.
Really?
Yeah, I read that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was his only Hollywood film. He didn't really particularly like Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we actually did do a Sindey Lumet film on this podcast recently.
Which one?
And it wasn't a very obscure one. We did Network, which is sort of like, I think it's an interesting juxtaposition because me being the real story guy of the group, I think like the one who's a real stickler for structure and meaning and, and everything and timing and everything. This film lacked a lot of the types of beats that I would normally like, there were moments where I'm like, some of this stuff doesn't make sense, whatever. But I quickly got rid of that whole thing because I realized this is a completely different type of film. I mean, Network is so stylized and so tight and so just like you can tell that this was like that was a massive undertaking, and I think that he probably was intending to make this, I don't know, this grand statement with a film like that. It's a different kind of movie, and the acting of course again is impeccable, but the storytelling is pristine as well, and the timing of everything is pristine.
Yeah, I don't see myself like getting someone in a headlock and being like, I have to show you the morning after. But I mean,
No, I know. But let me actually round out what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
The the film is it sticks with you. And like Judy said, like I actually want to go back and revisit it because there's so many things that are unbelievably magical about this film that it like all of these different elements, when you put them together, the sum is greater than the constituent parts. The acting is out of this world. Like it's just
Fantastic.
it's so good from every character. The set design and the color, like just everything. The photography is incredible. And I didn't even notice it, until after the fact. Thinking back on it, I'm like, wow, there were so many little, so many gorgeous shots and good use of color and texture, and the apartment that Raul Julia lives in, like that whole scene at the end. I mean, that's such a, it's such a significant part of the climax of the film that it took place in the space that it did. It's just it's almost like it's iconic, it's really like amazing on so many levels. So
I also liked the awkwardness of that love scene.
Which one? The Jeff Bridges?
I think where they're both sober. Yeah, where they're standing there, and I can't remember exactly what he says, but he says something, and she's sort of like, it's like you could see her in this moment of like, she's always drunk all the time. Wouldn't know intimacy if it like slapped her in the face, and she's like seeing it, and you could just like feel the like awkward like
no, because she asks him a silly question. She says, "Are you going to be here? Will you stay the night? Will you be here in the morning?"
That's
after.
during. I'm talking about that moment right before.
Oh, right before. Okay,
right before,
but that's still that awkwardness.
The whole
still
thing.
there, yeah.
But I loved that follow up though, because it was sort of like it was this awkward like tension, and you're like, and I feel like I'm going like, yes, they're gonna have sex, yay, and then they do, and then it gets like awkward, but like cute. But it was like cute, and so it was this moment of where it was like funny, and it was kind of corny, but like corny in like a fun way. Because you see that these both people have this like I don't want to say like use the word like trauma, but they're damaged in their own ways.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And so they have this like moment together. He's like, I live here. It was funny.
Yeah.
It's cute.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
it's actually one of my, I think it might be one of my favorite, if not my most favorite Jeff Bridges performance so far.
He's so
even more than the dude
in it.
It's just such a great character.
Even more than what?
The dude.
The Big Lebowski.
You think that's the second best?
He's heartbreaking. Like you love him. Like he's heartbreaking.
But but that's that Jeff Bridges magic, man. That guy just.
Well, it doesn't always happen. This is different. I mean, well, he's a great actor. Don't get me wrong, but here there's something about this character. The limp, the whole thing is past.
Yeah, no, it's on it's on full display in this film. His charm. But he is a very charming actor.
And he allows himself to look unattractive as an actor in the part. He's got the punch, we lost that one. He's got the punch.
Here, I'm just trying to fix my camera situation.
You kind of, and you have to, like, he's this, Jeff Bridges at this point is this heartthrob, and he's playing this real character who's, yes, he's attractive and charming, but he also looks like a schlub. I mean,
Well, that's what makes his character, I guess the word I'm looking for is endearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he says he can't afford to fix up his car. Yeah. Like in Hollywood, right? Where everything's about image.
Your car.
He also has all these subtle like micro gestures in his face that make him really like that are really magnetic. It makes you really want to look at him and
like remember when
she has that too, Jane Fonda. What? Sorry?
Remember when he scares her when she's walking out of the apartment after going back? And he's like right there.
Yeah.
He's just sort of looking at her like,
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah. I do like that they sort of make it, and for anyone who hasn't watched it yet, there'll be some spoilers, but I do like it that they sort of allude to like, well, is it him? Like, could it be?
Oh, yeah, that was
murder?
Great.
Like, because
right.
It's plausible. It's totally plausible.
Yes.
Like,
he
showed up there. Did he really go through her wallet and look at an address on a matchbox? Right. Which is like, yes, for someone who doesn't have a job, it might sit there and like look at this wallet and be like, how can I find her? But
and
like to anybody else,
well.
it's like, yeah.
He timed it well. He put it at the right moment in the film where you might just be like, well, so much about the story hasn't been clarified for so
Mhm.
many minutes now, and now this is coming, and then you really start to think, is it possible? Like that's where that was the moment where I was like, no, this is actually really good storytelling. It just
Mhm.
doesn't follow the typical, like every moment has some kind of specific thing leading to the next. No, it's like this is a story about people and their relationships more than it is about it's less a story, some like psychological thriller film noir, whatever,
Right.
the Maltese Falcon or The Big Sleep, and
Yeah.
what it's more about the actual individuals and how they relate to each other. But then you get those big payoffs about 3/4 into the film, where like if you're patient and you're watching these
Mhm.
relationships unfold, it's okay, here's the story again. The story's back now, and it's very interesting, and it's done. The timing is very good with that.
Yeah.
And where you're actually wondering, like, is Raul Julia actually like telling, is he being real? And then there's all the twists and turns at the end when you see what actually happened, which I won't spoil that part, but
Well, the whole, what is the name of the elite family? It's like patterned after the Rockefellers or
Yeah.
yeah,
whoever.
it's
It was Isabel, right? Was it? Was that her name?
Yeah, but there's a name they give the family.
Yeah,
a
they have a
name.
last name.
Almost sounds like Rand or something like that.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
a
that's
Harding.
Harding.
Is Isabel
Harding.
Harding. Diane Salinger
Right.
plays her.
Judge Harding.
Judge Harding is the father of the, soon to be wife. Yep.
I know in that dinner scene, I was like, are we in like Downton Abbey? Where are we?
Right.
I was a little confused by it, by that scene where he's like, well, we have a surprise party to go to. And it took me out just a little bit. I was going, what's going on here? Like,
yeah.
but it didn't take me out enough to go like, oh, this doesn't fit the movie. It just sort of, I was like, wait, where are they going? Why is he like, I even had a moment of, is he proposing right now? Like,
Yeah.
what's happening? And then like they
I
And they
not
end up going
sure.
back to the apartment, knowing, with Raul Julia's character knowing that his wife is there.
Yes.
Right.
So, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's a little weird. I agree.
Yeah. So
But
it's
I
like they're
think
going to surprise to go take care of that.
the way that I rationalized that part was that he needed to get out of there and handle some business
Mhm.
and tie up some loose ends, and he needed an excuse to get her out of there. And also the story needed an excuse to have that big reveal where it's almost like, where all the
Wait,
characters
wasn't
end
he
up in the
supposed
same.
to meet Jane Fonda somewhere? Isn't that why he had to leave? I can't remember now.
She was back at his apartment. She was
right. That's why he had to go.
Taking a bath, I think. Didn't he tell her to take a bath?
Something like that.
I think
Something
so.
like that.
I can't. Yeah, that I'm not. It's been.
I'd have to go back and watch it again. But I think he said something about like relax, take a bath.
But maybe they were planning to go back there and conspire some other way to deliver her to the authorities.
Right. Sure.
Not realizing that Jeff Bridges would be there
show up
and turn the whole thing upside down. That
Yeah.
they were probably, maybe it was that they were actually planning an elaborate manipulation.
Right.
For when they got back there and it was just the three of them, and some kind of like, tricky thing to get her out of the picture for good. But then that whole thing got a wrench thrown into it because of Jeff Bridges.
Yeah. And I think that's where I want to go back and watch it too, because he talked about the wig and he was like the hair. Oh my God. And then there's like a cameo from Kathy Bates. I'm like, why is Kathy Bates have like such a like I was like, oh, what's Kathy Bates? I want to see more, but it was like one scene.
For a second, I thought she might have been a suspect in the plot, like an actor.
Yeah.
Because they mentioned early on, early in the film, she pissed off that the D word that Jane Fonda had.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yes, she was the one, right? That
I believe she's the one.
Character.
Yeah. She's she might have been one of the killers.
I did love that moment though when she was on the phone with Jackie and he tells her what she did and she just laughs. Like she just has this like crash, like like she doesn't give a shit, like she's just like, ah ha ha, that's funny.
She knows what she is.
There's a dead body in the bed.
Yeah, it's like she just has this moment of like, yeah, I did that because it's probably true.
Right.
Go me. But like,
Yeah.
oh, crash my career. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. But that's
oops.
funny. But it was
It
just
is
like so
funny.
great. She has this way of those moments like in the airplane, not in the airplane, in the airport, and then there, she has that way of like, just completely turning in a second in her emotional
she
range.
snaps. Yeah.
Which is skill. Would you
Yeah.
agree, Seth? To be able to just like completely and not have it look like, oh, she planned that like whole thing, like she just like did it and came back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this movie has 3 truly great actors in it.
Yeah.
It's
And she was
really
nominated for the Oscar.
Yeah.
I don't know
she
about
was,
you guys. Whenever I have never once been bored when Raul Julia is on screen.
No, he's incredible.
Never.
He's great.
Never.
He's
Not once.
hilarious too.
Yeah.
None of the 3 are boring at all,
No,
even if they
never.
just sit there, which is the
Yeah.
sign of a great actor, that they could sit there in just complete silence and it's so full.
Yeah.
They also seem to have really good impulses to give a nod to Seth Michael May of acting on impulse.
Thank you.
There's a moment when Jeff Bridges is setting up the Thanksgiving dinner with the turkey sandwiches and the mayo that he doctored up to make it kind of add some kind of magic to the meal. There's a moment where like he's having second thoughts about the candles, like maybe that's a little too forward or a little too romantic, and he starts moving the candles back inside, and that's when Jane Fonda's character appears, and he's like, doesn't know what to do. He puts the candles back down, and one of the candles goes out, and he casually, with really good timing and really natural reactions during the course of their interaction over that scenario, like he strikes the match. You don't even notice it. He strikes the match and relights the candle. And I'm imagining that the scene wasn't written, that he should pretend to move the candles back and make sure that only one candle goes out and then relight the candle. There's probably a lot of really improvisational stuff happening there. Not that that's like so crazy, but it's the way that he does it. It's the timing and the delivery. It's so natural. And these are like 2 masterful actors who are really comfortable working off of each other. You can tell,
If you want to watch a really good documentary with Raul Julia in it, there's it's on YouTube. It's called Kiss Me Petruchio, and it's the documentary of Taming the Shrew in the Park with Meryl Streep and him in the park in the 70s. It's really good.
Nice.
Yeah, check it out. Everyone should check that out.
The other thing that a lot of major productions or even independent film productions don't do, that Sindey Lumet always insisted on, because he did material like this, is he would spend 2 weeks rehearsing.
Oh, sure.
They don't. A lot of producers and directors don't insist on it. It's like, it doesn't matter.
I mean, I think of Tarantino as kind of one of the modern guys that still does that, but you're right. It's not, there's a certain thing about, and this is interesting because I just came off of a recording session, and it's a similar thing in the music world. Like you get a band together that really can play their instruments really well, that know each other really well because they rehearse together and perform live together all the time. And you put them in the studio, you get a very different kind of magic than if you got a bunch of different guys that are all really skilled and try to throw them together as session musicians. It's not like one is better than the other, but there is a certain naturalness and a certain kind of vibe and feeling you get from the musicians that really know each other intimately. And I think that's one of the benefits of doing like almost like theatrical style rehearsals before you start shooting on a film set. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's the same kind of thing. Guys need an opportunity. If you want it to feel really natural, you got to give guys an opportunity to jam. Now, that being said, the most masterful artists will still be able to put on incredibly good performances without that. But there is a certain kind of magic that you
No question,
get
no
when you
question.
do that.
No, I think what he describes it in making movies. Again, everybody should read it. If you're interested in films or interested in filmmaking, it's a great book. He describes his process where it's really about exploring possibilities, not necessarily setting a scene to way it's supposed to be played.
Absolutely.
He uses the image of I rehearse up to right before the boil. Like if you're boiling water for tea,
Yes.
you don't just get it right before the boil starts, and then you stop.
It's like you're rehearsing for maximal flexibility.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I could see that. That's awesome. Yeah, I got to read that book.
It's a great book.
I read it a long time ago.
not a long read. It's like
No, it's easy.
200 delicious pages, and it's very entertaining. It's like
Yeah. It seems like one of those books that everybody who's in the industry reads.
yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
That's what's up. All right, so that was
I don't have any final thoughts.
I think everybody should go out and see this film. And, so this is a segue into what I hope to do for our next show. I was tossing around a few different ideas, and in the spirit of this film, there's one film that I've been wanting to suggest for a long time now. It came out a year after this film in 1987, and I'm not married to it, but if you guys would indulge me, I would love to be able to do this film. It's the first film that was written and directed by David Mamet. He wrote films and he directed films before. But
House of Yes?
House of Yes is the nightclub in Bushwick, Brooklyn.
No, House of Games.
House of Games is the film that I'm talking about. Yeah. And so it's
Joe Mantegna?
Joe Mantegna. He has his ensemble cast, right? And these guys that he works with a lot, again in the spirit of what we're talking about with.
I always wanted to see that. So
so you've never seen it. Okay.
No.
I became obsessed with this film a few years ago, and I've watched it numerous times since then, and I have the Criterion collection with all of the bonus material and stuff. So I've dug really deep into this film, and even though it doesn't fit our criteria for films that are, in terms of it being like, this was a widely praised film, but it did not do great. And I consider it obscure because of all it's not a well-known Mamet film, and like it's not one of his top 3 films, let's say. But he clearly put so much time and effort and energy into this film. He wanted to make a masterpiece, and I think he succeeded. And I don't know. I think it would be a really interesting discussion. I'm really liking this whole 80s kick that we're on. And I don't know. What do you guys think?
Do we have Judy next week?
I don't think I'm here next week.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Then
I think I could make that happen. Well, you already turned me on to Edmund, which I probably never would have seen had it not been for
Edmund's.
I mean, I've seen all the famous Mamet, Spanish Prisoner, and Gary Glenn Ross, and I think I saw the one with Gene Hackman, the heist movie, and Red Velvet, and all of the later ones. But no, I never really explored the earlier stuff, other than the stuff that he was hired to do, like The Verdict or Postman Always Rings Twice, films like that. I never saw those two. I never saw Edmund. I've never seen this one. So
I think this has a lot of goodies for all of us. The storytelling is it's very noirish. The storytelling is excellent. The acting is excellent, and there's a lot of really just cool layers to it. The visuals are amazing, and the music is really good. So
is he still working? Is he at this point working with his first wife in this?
Yes.
Or is it?
Yes. Lindsay Krause is the star of this film.
Who's actually a wonderful actress.
She is.
I mean, no offense to Rebecca Pidgeon, but
what'd you say?
No offense to Rebecca Pidgeon, but
no, I think I think Rebecca Pidgeon's actually a good actress. I know she gets a lot of flack. I think
Yeah, no.
You know, David Mamet writes in a style that's very difficult for actors, you know.
Well, he made her a
Not-
prop. He made her a prop in Edmund, unfortunately. She's like a
Well, it's
She's like an idea.
it's a small role, you know, but
Right.
she was in
Yeah,
The
I know.
Spanish Prisoner as well, you know, and she had
Yeah.
quite a big role in The Spanish Prisoner, and that was probably quite early in their relationship, I believe.
Yeah.
I thought she did a good job with that character in that film. But anyway.
I have to see that again.
So
Cool. Let's do it.
if nothing else, yeah, next week we got House of Games, and we'll see you then. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Cool.
Thank you guys for indulging me on this one. I'm glad you liked
Absolutely.
We liked
it. I was
it.
nervous about it. I was
All right.
like, is it just me?
No, dude, I really liked this movie,
liked
man.
it. Yeah.
I really did. And I'm glad that I saw it the day of. Because it's like, yeah, it's super fresh in my mind because I watched it this afternoon.
Yeah.
And it was a nice afternoon flick, you know. I
Yeah.
don't usually watch movies during the day, but I really
Did all
enjoyed
of us watch it today? Because I
I
watched
watched
it in the
it today,
afternoon.
too,
Yeah.
I saw it last couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have watched it earlier, but I had, you know,
Yeah.
recording sessions this week. But
Yeah.
awesome, man. Thanks for that. Thanks for the great film. We'll
Thank
see
you
you guys
guys.
next
Thanks.
week.
Cool.
Peace.